Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever it is you are. Welcome to the first of what will hopefully be kind of an ongoing monthly stream that I do that is a design commentary stream. Uh, oh boy, Alex and Josh are here. That's great news. Um, the point of these streams, well, the goal, the reason we're doing this stream is because on Patreon I hit 50 patrons. And when that happened, I said, okay, cool. I'll do like monthly streams, design commentary. I'll give you some options. You pick the game you want me to talk about. I'll just talk about it and then hang out, answer any questions folks have. If nobody has questions, that's cool too. We can just hang out. And so I gave some options. We had Nova Time to Kill, which just came out. Slayers 1.5, and I think Corvid Court because I've got no. I did light because light's on my mind. Um, and Slayers 1.5 was like the clear winner. At least last time I checked. I didn't actually check today. I should do that just in case there was some wild swing. But I think I already announced it was going to be Slayers 1.5. So yeah, Slayers 1.5 won. So 1.5 Slayers. So I was thinking about this before coming on today. Like, I didn't plan anything. I have no script or outline necessarily what I want to cover. There is already a design commentary about Slayers. Um, it's here. I recorded this a while back, but it captures a lot of like my idea behind Slayers. Now, my thoughts about the game have changed since probably I recorded that. They certainly have changed since I released the game. So, maybe in our discussion today about 1.5, some of that stuff will come up, or just as I'm kind of like scrolling through, I'll just kind of say whatever's on my mind about Slayers at that time. Um, so I don't think that this commentary stream will necessarily be like what maybe some of the others would be, which are like, let me kind of scroll through the book and give you a sense of why I was doing what I was doing, because I've kind of done that with this. This is going to be more like, so here's the changes that are coming up. Why are these changes happening and stuff like that? So I think that's kind of the feel for the stream we're going for today. Uh, it's a quiet day in the house right now. We just did a home inspection for a house that we're interested in buying, so that went really well. Brinkwood has arrived. Oh my God, look how pretty that game is, right? That is a cool looking game. I really want to play Brinkwood. I think Josh has played Brinkwood. Um, but if you're not familiar with it, Blades in the Dark game, or Forge in the Dark game, I should say, but about overthrowing. You are a brigand, a commoner radicalized by tragedy. You're trying to overthrow the blood-soaked vampires that oppress and dominate your world. That is such a great pitch. Like, I'm sold instantly on that. I do like this kind of glossy hardcover. Um, Nova is matte, which I like for Nova. Nova looks better matte rather than glossy, I think. But I do, I appreciate the glossy vibe. I don't see it as often. I think there's two companion games for Brinkwood. Have I just completely forgotten about this? Were they a part of the Kickstarter? I don't remember this at all. But that's very exciting. Um, Refuge and In the Face Fire. Yeah, they're part of the Kickstarter. I just completely forget about it, right? I back something and then it disappears from my brain until they're like, hey, this thing is on the way. And I'm like, oh, cool. I forgot about this thing. The timing is weird for Brinkwood for me because I literally just started up a new Blades in the Dark campaign with a friend of mine who loves Blades. We've done a couple of campaigns together, and his friend is just the two PC crew, which is kind of cool. And he's never played role playing games before, but he's super into it. But we're like two sessions in, and now I kind of want to be like, yeah, but do you want to do this instead? It's the same rules, more or less. It'd be neat. It'd be neat. Refuge is like a downtime. Oh, belonging outside belonging game. It Despair is meant to be a prequel to your campaign. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, so yeah, you said companion games. That makes sense. That's very cool. I like that. I've been thinking about companion games because I've been thinking about Riley's Markout game. But I'll save that for another time because that's not what we're here to talk about. But I do like the idea of companion games, and I like the idea of companion games that you play away from the table. Save that for another day. Cool. All right, well, I'm just waxing here. Uh, the vibe, the setup of this is like I'm gonna just talk about 1.5. I'm gonna just talk about Slayers. If at any point in time you want to like stop me or ask a question, ask away. Like this isn't like a presentation. This is us just kind of hanging out, me telling you about what Slayers 1.5 is all about, what's the kind of the method behind the madness, so to speak. And oh, there's a Clover Cam redemption. Let me see if I can capture her. She is laying down on that ottoman back there. She blends in. Her fur is getting lighter and lighter. So in our extremely tan and beige apartment, she kind of just blends in everywhere. Um, I'm very excited for this house. It's exactly natural camouflage for a spa. I'm very excited for this house that we're gonna buy. Uh, Clover will be able to romp around, scamp around. She'll have a yard to play in. So that'll be very exciting. Okay, well, let's talk about Slayers. So I'm gonna just assume that people watching right now know what Slayers is. So I'm not gonna like pitch the game. It's been out for a while. It won an award. I instantly, after winning this award, I put this big gaudy picture on the the itch page because I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm proud of this." Um, it's out there. This is all like this is the page for like Slayers on itch. Now, when 1.5 comes out, I'll update like the look of this page, but like the concept is gonna all still be the same here. Um, if you haven't checked out Slayers, you're missing. That's true. And once you've picked up Slayers, go buy all of Alex's stuff because Alex makes really good Slayer stuff. Like really good. Navi, voting for a minimum of one electric blue wall. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Absolutely. But that'll be my room, my office room. My room will be so different than all the rest of the house. It'll be great. So, Slayers 1.5 is a update that is I call it 1.5 because it's not the second edition of Slayers. When I think of like 2Es of games, I think of like a new way to play the game, like a pretty big substantial rule, like not just like cleaning and fine tuning things, but like we've actually decided that we're gonna play it like this, right? Like if we were to use D&D as an example, right? Like we can look at the switch from like 4E, very like tactical grid like war like it's like a minis game, like a war game, to the D20 sort of proficiency focus system that we see today. Um, those are totally different. And so I don't think of Slayers 1.5 as the second edition. I think of it as like Slayer's Definitive Edition or Remaster or something like that. And I've seen so many people doing this lately. And I think it's great. I think it's very cool that lots of people are like, hey, this game, I released it 6 months ago, a year ago. I've been thinking about it. I've been tweaking it. I want to do a new thing. In fact, Josh just did this, right? With extra causal. Oh, I'm going to have to try and spell it. Oh, I nailed it in one. I'm so good. Right? Like here is extra causal. Like Josh just did an update on this. Brand new brand new layout. I think Josh did some like some like tweaks and stuff like that, but it's not like a second edition of extra causal. It is a reimagining, a remaster of sorts. And I think that's cool. I'm into it. Like that's what I'm gonna do with Light eventually, with the Beacon edition. So Slayers 1.5 is, yeah, I think remaster is like a good word for it. It's not a remake, right? It's like a honing process. You're honing, you're making it cleaner, sleeker, faster, better, right? Harder, better, faster, stronger. Um, so Slayers has been out for a year. I've had the chance to obviously play it quite a bit with people, but other people have played it and have shared thoughts and things like that. Nova Beacon Edition with just so many more crows. There's so many crows in it now. Oh, my dog's wagging her tail, but she's asleep. I don't know if this is going to pick up on the camera. It might not just because of lighting and everything, but the crow enemy in Nova that Eddie drew is so creepy. So creepy. Um, so with me playing the game and other people playing the game, I've heard from folks. I've gotten feedback from folks, and there's only so much playtesting you can do with a game before you release it, and then eventually you learn things after the fact. I'll say, kind of breaking from Slayers here for a second to talk about Nova. I was talking with I was talking with some people about this recently. Nova's the first game that I've ever released where like a lot of people have played it immediately after getting it. That has not happened with my other games. Like I'll release a game and like some people, like a couple of people will play it. Most people will read it. You know, this is a collector's hobby, I think, more than it is a player's hobby. Um, but Nova was one of those few instances where people are like, I played it, here's what I thought, here's what I thought. It kind of happened with Slayers. But I think like with Slayers, it was mostly I was hearing from people who were making stuff for Slayers rather than playing stuff or playing the game. Um, People were playing it, and that's how I got the feedback that led to 1.5. But and maybe it's just a um, availability sort of bias right now, where like I'm just seeing it with Nova. Um, which is cool because now I've already been able to update the Nova doc. The PDF doc will go out when I confirm the print order. I've been able to make changes. And so the changes to Slayers have been slower because it just didn't get played as much. Again, not that it didn't get played, but it did. Um, it was like a trickle of feedback. So we took this trickle of feedback and said, let's update this thing. And the timing felt right with the Almanac. With the Almanac coming out, we thought, let's have another sort of exciting thing to go along with the announcement of the Almanac. Slayers 1.5 is in the works. You will get it eventually, as long as you own Slayers. There's no timeline on 1.5. I'll just say that right now. Mike is working on it, but Mike and I just had to talk the other day. Once I get all the drafts for Almanac, the district drafts, Mike's priority switches to the Almanac, right? Like that's a Kickstarter that we are obligated to get to people. 1.5 is the eventual free update for Slayers. Um, the text is done. People could read it, but it doesn't look like what the game should look like. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So the game is the Slayers 1.5 text is done. Here is Slayers 1.5 as a text. I rewrote a bunch of stuff. I changed a bunch of things, and then I sent this off to Will Yobst. And let me just pull up those Slayers 1.5 patch notes because this will be the best way to describe what is going on in 1.5, and I can talk about like why we did things the way that we did. So the very first thing here at the top is editing. Slayers was not edited. This book, the core book, not edited. You know, I edited it, but self-editing is a skill I certainly do not have. Um, because I know what I mean, right? I know what I mean when I write things, so of course I don't see it. And Will Yobst, who I have had as my editor now for a few games, is like the best editor in the biz. I love Will. The reason I like Will as an editor, not only they are like extremely capable at like copy editing, making sure the words are good, but Will is also a game designer or a role-playing game designer, which means will take the time to like notice the things that don't make sense, like not like doing like full mechanic breakdown, but just like, hey, just so you know, like this, like gamers, and that's my favorite kind of note that they leave for me is gamer question in in the margins, because will always ask like, yeah, but what about like this weird scenario that might show up? Like do we need to clarify this because gamers will have a question about this sort of thing? And that alone makes Will worth every single penny. Um, so the game is being edited, and that's pretty fantastic. Uh, that's nice. That's nice so that the game reads better and all of that. But what that means is now I'm handing it off to Mike. The other big like overall general update is that Slayers 1.5 has new art and new layout. Um, I've handed it off to Mike Riemann, who did the art for. I'm gonna crush all my zines here. For Dust, like Mike did the art and layout for Dust. So if you like the way that Dust is sort of the vibe of that, Mike does a really good job of making cool art that kind of thematically goes with whatever's on the page. Um, he's gonna be doing that. He's also the one doing the almanac. So Mike is now kind of becoming the de facto artist of Slayers. Here's my rationale behind the art thing. This is something that I do want to talk about. When I first started putting Slayers together, it was my first big collaborative project where, like, and by collaborative I mean I had to get a team together. Um, Score was my first Kickstarter, but Mike and I did that together. He did graphic design, I did writing. We basically did like labor swap on that because I helped him with another game, with design. And when I was first putting together the Slayers thing, I didn't know anybody in the scene really. So I was just like, who do you know for layout? Who do you know for artists for stuff? And I reached out to a bunch of people, had a few conversations with people, and then kind of just went like, okay, whoever is available and I vibe with, like, we're gonna just go with this. And I remember having this conversation with Mike and another friend of mine who is a graphic designer and a couple of other people, and I said, "Yeah, so I've got this person who's doing the art for the Slayers. I've got this person who's doing the art for the monsters. I've got this person who's doing the art for the setting stuff, like the landscapes. I've got this person for layout, and then this is what I'm doing for the cover." And at the time, Mike and Jordan and some of my other friends are like, well, isn't your art going to be all over the place? Like you won't have a unified sense of style in the book. Like here's the cover. It's this painted style, kind of creepy cool thing. But then like the very first thing you flip into is Madeline's art of like just part of the spread of the city. Totally different vibe, right? Immediately you get two totally different vibes. I like this. I'm for this. I think this is cool. But I'm also understanding that like it creates a an incohesive vibe or feel throughout the whole book. Now here was my justification at the time because I mean a different person for like I had Justin who did the Slayers art, I had Phil who did the monster art, Madeline, like I said, did the landscape stuff. This is cover art. We'll talk about cover art in a second. Um, so like four different artists. and my rationale at the time was, well, the city is this weird infinite place that's like a mishmash of a bunch of different things. So I want the art to look like that. I want the art to feel like that. So the Slayers have a very different vibe, right? The Slayer art, it's kind of this cool, almost like comic booky. They're clearly like powerful, interesting, dynamic people. That's interesting compared to like the very much more like detailed art of the monsters. And then obviously I showed you some of the examples of the landscapes being different. They are more like painterly and beautiful. Um, so totally different vibes, right? With this art. My justification was, well, the city is a mishmash, so the art should be too. I still like that. I still appreciate that. But I also appreciate, having seen it in some books, like an artistic direction to a book. To a book having a sense of like, this is the vibe we're going for, and we see it in the fonts that are chosen. We see it in the way that the layout is put together. We see it in the way that the art is put together, the assets that are on the page. Like I see that and I like that. Like the reason Nova is such a stunning book to me is because I've got two artists on it. I've got Eddie who did the sparks, and then Jam did all the layout, the assets and stuff like that. And they both got essentially the same brief, and they worked within that brief, and they bounced, like they looked at what each other was doing and saw inspiration of it. So like I told Jam to kind of go with this kind of grungier sci-fi apocalyptic sort of thing, and that's why we're getting these cool like spray paint vibes. And then the sparks are supposed to be these sort of like ranging from creepy to inspiring robotic beings. And so like there's a unified feel to Nova when I flip through this compared to when I flip through through Slayers. This is a long time to spend on art, but I think it's an important reason for this update. Um, so I commissioned Mike to do the layout again. Um, to Not again, like he's doing the layout now. So it's a new layout using Mike's style. Mike is going to make assets for it. We still haven't decided what we're going to do about existing art. Um, Mike is likely going to make new art because that's his approach. He likes doing that. And like, here is Mike's art of a Slayer, the Deadeye from Dust, which I think looks fucking awesome. It also looks like the rest of the book, which is important, right? So, like, I dig that. Like, Mike made this whole spread of this town, and if the Slayers themselves look like the town, they look like they belong there, um, which is, I think, important. Um, so basically, Mike's going through this thing, and he's doing it again, um, which I'm very excited about. If you've seen like the reason we had on the Slayers Almanac this art, the Slayers Row art put up, because Slayers Row wasn't intended to be one of the districts in the Almanac. It's going to be there because we made it at this point, but the reason Mike did this one first is because this is the vibe that the Slayers book, Slayers 1.5, is going to have. It's going to have this style. Um, so Mike was doing practice run essentially, making assets and templates for how the layout of Slayers 1.5 would look like by making a practice spread for the Slayers Almanac. So if you dig this particular aesthetic of the colors and the stuff like that, that's the general direction that Mike is going to be taking Slayers 1.5, which I think is very cool. I'm very excited about that. So that and so new layout, and then Mike made a new cover already. So like here's the new cover. It's obviously an homage to the original cover, right? It's got the hooded Slayer up front, looking off into the distance of the city, but it's with kind of Mike's art style and similar, tones and colors and everything like that. Yeah, the almanac is going to be 11 districts now, because it's going to have uh, we're going to include Slayer's Row now. I'm vibing on the full color interiors in indie. Yeah, like color interiors are like it's good. Obviously, it's time consuming and it's expensive, but Mike and I are good friends. And I had made some money on other games, and so I said, "Hey, I've got this budget." Basically, every dollar I make in games just goes right back into the next project. So I said, "Hey, Mike, I got this pile of cash from games, and I want to like invest it in new art. You wanna you wanna do this? You wanna?" And like, I'm not saying this is a for sure thing, but I would love, and Mike and I have just briefly alluded to the idea of us kind of like full time doing like a partnership on like art and design because I love this style. The reason I love this style is because it's similar to like Spire style, like Stone's. What the fuck is his first name? Isaac Stone? Adrian Stone's style. Um, so I don't know. Like imagine a cover like this style, but with Corvid Court. Like having Mike do a Corvid Court cover and having him do a style like this in light would be really cool. Um, and so we did a new cover because we want the cover to like go with the interior style, but also because, and this is something that I'm still mad about. I'm not mad about. I just think it's silly. Is people gave me shit for using stock art on the cover for Slayers. Shouldn't do that. You shouldn't give people shit about that, is what I'm saying. You could use stock art for the cover of your games all day long. That's the reason the stock art exists. Um, but uh, I used this image because it reads as Slayers to me. I saw this image and I was like, fuck, that's Slayers 100%. So I used it. And I had some people who like I respect and dig in the scene who were like, "Hey man, you shouldn't use a stock image for a cover." And I was like, "Fuck off." So it's not a stock image anymore. It's Mike's art, but it is an homage to the original cover that I fell in love with. I'm sorry, Clover. I knocked some stuff over and spooked you. I woke her up and now she's angry. So don't be shitty about people's like art choices in their games. Don't do that. That's not cool. So those are like the big like sweeping changes that find their way through everything in the Slayers 1.5 update. Like new art, new layout, new cover, and then the rules read so much better because of Will. So let's talk about those rules. Let's talk about some of those changes. Ba, ba, ba. Okay. Yeah, those are big, very necessary changes. Those are good. So what are the changes? Like I said, the stuff that went into the changing of 1.5 are it's to make the game sleeker, faster, smoother. It's not adding a bunch of stuff. So don't look for like brand new ways to play the game like a base building component or downtime actions or anything like that. That's not in Slayers 1.5. I am interested in making supplements for that sort of stuff. So like on Patreon, I plan on releasing a Slayer's advancement supplement, like a new way to do advancement with like the two-part character classes that I'm really into. But I didn't want to fundamentally change how Slayer's worked on its own with that update. So that's like an optional sort of supplement. So I didn't want to put that stuff in here. Oh, the other thing about layout and art is that I told Mike, make it however many pages it needs to be. I fought tooth and nail with Affinity to get this to 60 pages. Why did I try to get this to 60 pages? Because Clover, thought I heard her. Um, why did I try and get this to 60 pages? I tried to get this to 60 pages because when I put the like put this together on Mixum and they gave me the estimated weight of one of these books was going to be 8.3 ounces, which oh no, not 8.3, like 7.3, 7.3, which for those of you who know anything about international shipping, go cutting it close, but you're good. The second you hit 8 ounces or more on something and you're going to ship it internationally, the price goes from anywhere between 12 to 15 bucks to like 24 to $25. It's a huge price difference. I made a huge mistake in Slayers by charging people for shipping ahead of time as part of their pledges. Then I got these books. And how heavy are these books? They're 9.3 ounces. They're way off. They're way more expensive than I thought they were going to be. So I got fucked. Fucked on shipping. 100% fucked on shipping. And like, that's a bummer. That's a huge lesson learned. I do not charge for shipping during Kickstarter anymore. I do all of that after the fact, so I don't get fucked on it. But now, like, I restricted this to 60 pages because I thought it was going to keep me in my safe shipping thing. And now I know, like, well, fuck it. If 60 pages is already past it, like, let this book be 80 pages, 100 pages. It's all going to be the same price point. Unless I suddenly make a 2 pound book, it's going to be the same. So I said, Mike, have fun with it. And so he's going to spread it out a little bit in terms of text. So that's also a nice relief. All right. That's a lot of like aesthetic stuff. That's a lot of like stuff that's going to make the game read better, look better, all that good stuff. But what's actually going on? What's going on? So changes are like mostly in like combat stuff. So one of the things that we have added is that all classes have a ready action. So let me scroll to the classes here in the actual text. So all the classes have a ready action, which if you look at these patch notes, basically says like we kind of had this halfway, where two of the classes had something that like they did at the start of combat, and the other two didn't. And it would probably help them if they could do something at the start of combat that would allow them to kind of like get ready. And I think I saw that and I thought, okay, what could we do to kind of like create a more even experience across these? So the tactician already has this. Tactician rolls their dice pool. Gunslinger gets their bullets ready, right? So the blade and the arcanist need something. So the blade gets this ready action where they get to take a stance because that's their whole quick action is the stances, like switching between stances, but they technically weren't in a stance at the start of a fight, which felt weird, right? It felt weird after the fact to be like, oh, like early on in the fight, I have to use my quick action to get into a stance because I'm not in one right away, and they're clearly beneficial to be in one. So that means I either can't attack or I can't move or something else. We'll talk about moving in a second. Um, so I said, pick a stance right away. Just pick a stance to be in, and you're there. Like that's. So now your quick action is about changing the stance rather than like getting into one and then starting to change it. So I think that's a really nice little clean change for the blade. Gunslinger already had this, putting the bullets in front of you, so that's their ready action. Arcanist now chooses a favored spell. So they choose one of the spells that they know, and it's their favored spell. Whenever you use your favorite spell, you don't mark corruption unless you boost it. So normally as an Arcanist, you always have to mark corruption every time you do a spell. Hit, miss, regardless, just casting spells corrupts you. But one of them, and you get to change it at the start of every fight, is your favored spell. So the reason behind this is rather than having like a permanent favored spell, it's okay, we know we're about to fight something that is like a big group of people. What spell do I have in my arsenal that's going to be the thing that's going to be like, I'm probably going to lean on this a lot. Let me make that my favorite spell. Or we're going toe to toe against like a big ass monster. Let me choose this spell as my favorite spell because I know this is the thing I'm going to be using a lot of. So I like doing the favorite spell thing as a thing that you choose at the start of fight rather than as a like permanent ongoing, this is the one that I just always know. So that's the tactician, or sorry, that's the arcanist ready action, and then the tactician already had this with uh their dice pool that they roll. So I like this. Like all the classes now get like a thing that they get to do at the beginning, gets them combat ready, gets them to specialize even a little bit more in like reading the situation, understanding what the best thing to do is. The other really important thing for combat is that moving is no longer an action because that's boring. That's boring because like most of the time the slayers needed to move throughout fights. And so like if you knew that half the actions you would take in a combat roughly were going to be moving, that's just like I mean that's not fun in my opinion. So we have removed the need for move to be one of your actions. You always can move for free. It can be start of your turn, end of your turn, between two actions, whenever you want to do it. But now you can do it as a free thing, and you don't have to do it. So this allows the Slayers to be more mobile in the first place, right? Because either you moved because you had to, like the blade needs to be next to people. So if it kills something, the blade needs to move. Or it encourages the movement, right? Now the gunslinger could be like moving around a little bit more to get that lining up the shots on the people that they want. The arcanist could be repositioning to try and cast the spell on the person or the things that they want to cast on. So um, I think this is a nice change to like it gets the keeps the field of combat more mobile, frees people up, and on top of that, it's now going to encourage people to use those skill actions and quick actions more often. Because most of the time you're going to be using like your attack thing. But rarely did I see people use skill actions. Like some people never use skill actions in combat, and that's fine. But like there are some people who use them every turn, which was also fine and very cool. So freeing this up, I think is cool because it allows people to just be like, oh, I'm not just gonna move, attack, move, attack. Now I can quick action, attack, move, skill action. Right? You get there's just creates more combinations or possibilities, which I think is cool. It becomes a lot harder to die. Um, if you've seen any of my games lately, you will see that I don't like character death too much. I'm not a big fan of it. Your table can do it. I've changed the rules, like I've changed the wording in it, so like if you want character death to be a thing, let it be a thing. But in this now, Slayers become downed rather than dead when they reach zero. So like in Slayers, you when you hit zero, you had one shot at getting somebody a successful mend roll to like heal you back up. If they failed, you were dead. You were done. Which, if you want to go for like a gritty Monster Hunter game, that certainly can fit the theme. But now there is the there's an extra layer of like you're down when you hit zero. If you get hit again, you're dead. So you can still die. It's just a little bit harder. Where like it's not a one-time shot to try and heal you. Like people can bring you back like multiple times, and it also is a decision, an active decision on the GM's part to be like, I'm now going to attack the downed person, which is something then that as a table you will have discussed as, yeah, we're down for this. We're down for player death. Down rule is really nice for one shots where I don't really want death on the table until the final. Yeah, exactly, right? It works really well for one shots, and I, interestingly enough, find that Slayers tends to be a game that gets one shot. Um, the death stuff just reminds me, interestingly, of the Nova uh, stuff. That, people are playtesting Nova right now, or not playtesting, but playing Nova, and there's two sparks in particular that people are like, well, what's going on here? Drifter, who is extremely powerful spark. And people are learning that they have to like play around with it because Drifter can kind of go down or supernova voluntarily. It's very powerful, intentionally so, and you have to learn how to play around it. And then there's Sanguine, the vampire spark. And there's somebody who just posted like a really long comment on the Kickstarter page, and I appreciate people reaching out, but like it's this really long thing about like, well, this person like keeps dying and coming back. Like, what's like what are we supposed to do about this person who's guaranteed to not die? And in my head, it's just like they just don't die, right? Like they chose that spark for a reason because they don't want to die. They want to play the undead vampire spark. Um, so you know, play PC death is something that you should discuss as a group, as a table, rather than having like hard and fast set rules in the book where it's like, it's all right. This is the rule that you must die now. That's not cool to me. That's awesome, Alex, that you run one shots every month for, or no, you run one shots every month, and Slayers is a popular choice. You run it 4 times this year. That's so cool. That's the coolest thing. That tell designers that you play their games is like the greatest feeling in the world. So anyway, specific changes. The blade. The only change to the blade is in getting this ready action. There might be like small wording changes to advances, but nothing worth noting here. The Gunslinger has the ready action. The other two, there's two big changes to the Gunslinger, which is harm is increased to 2 instead of 1, um, which is I think really important because it makes the Gunslinger more powerful. The blade is ridiculously powerful, especially if paired with a tactician. Like a blade is just going to alpha strike things, which it's designed to do. That's the purpose. But also the gunslinger should be powerful too. They wield these like legendary powerful guns that should be scary. So rather than bringing blade down, I just bring gunslinger up. Uh, like this is my problem with games like Destiny, where they're like, well, this gun's too powerful, so we're gonna nerf this gun. I'm like, no, just make all the other guns more powerful. That's we like the power. The power is fun. Um, so boosted up the gunslinger. The other thing is I've removed the trigger limit. That was such like a weird rule that I made, like a weird limitation on the gunslinger, because already they weren't necessarily dealing a shit ton of damage because they didn't hit with all the dice they rolled. And now I was like, yeah, but you can only roll 4 dice. Yeah, I got 6 here in front of me. Yeah, but you can only roll 4. Like that was a weird limitation and was unsatisfying. So that's been removed, and any advances that related to trigger limit have been replaced with other advances. Um, Also, there were a bunch of runes that you could choose that dealt no damage. They just had effects. They all deal at least 1 harm now. All in the vein for the gunslinger to make them more powerful. That's my goal, is to make the gunslinger feel like somebody who could, if they really wanted to, blow all 6 bullets and just blow something away. That's cool. Hell yeah, I'm glad you dig the changes. Arcanist is a little bit faster. They were a D4 before, which is like just feels cruel, honestly. So I made them a little bit faster because they just were usually the last person to act all the time, and that's not fun. Like they should have a chance at being a little bit faster in the line. Um, this I've also increased their starting spells to 4, as opposed to 3. I just think give them more variety of things that they can do, especially with the favored spell thing, right? With favored spell, now they have 4 spells, one of which that won't cost them corruption, but they still have 3 other things that they can confidently go select and like get their corruption going. And then the other thing is the new favored or the new ready action. There's a bunch of changes to like wording of spells, but no like major changes to any of the Arcanist's actual spells. So it's just clarifying rules on that. Tactician didn't get touched other than like clarifying stuff. So because the Tactician is the perfect class. I love the Tactician class so much. It's exactly the kind of support class that I've always wanted in games. So I'm really happy with the Tactician. So I'm glad that after doing this and talking to Will about it, it was like, nah, keep it. It's good. So some other changes like are all again in the vein of like making the game move faster or like be more streamlined, not adding stuff. So for the monsters, right? Changing the way that the stat block is built so that there's like specific segments. Let me show you an example of what this looks like. So let me show you what an old stat block for a monster looked like. So Like, here's what old stat blocks for monsters looked like. So you had your HP, which has been replaced with health. Like, for some reason, this was the only place. I think I've replaced it with health. God, I hope I did. I'm saying this now. Um, or maybe I'm thinking of drifters. Anyway, you had your HP, your speed, and then your actions. And then I had this list of actions that could be the ongoing, the actions, or the reactions. And I had this number, how many things you could do on your turn. But this number only applies to these, the actual actions. Reactions don't cost this number. You can do them once per round when somebody does something, this if-then statement. Ongoing were just like constant passive bonuses. So they didn't cost this action either. So why are they here? Why is this list structured this way? It's not a helpful way of structuring the list. Now this isn't like formatted, but this will just give you an idea. The way that my monsters work, where are my monsters? So like here's an example. So like Clockwork Killer. So, I guess I did keep it as HP. HP, speed, and now if a monster has a passive, which used to be called ongoing, it's now just called a passive, you list that. Then you say actions, how many they could do, and now it says also plus move, because monsters could move for free during their turns. Slayers couldn't before. So that was a weird disconnect. So like the monsters could have a free move, and then however many actions they could, but Slayers had to spend an action to move. So now they're unified, right? Both groups get to move for free, and now the monsters have X number of actions that they can take. And it's listed like here are the actual actions that Clockwork Killer takes. And then the reaction is listed separately. So this just will help, like it's mostly a formatting thing, right? It's mostly a formatting thing to make this a quicker, easier thing for the GM to be able to look at and go, I know what this monster can do on its turn. I know what it's just constantly doing, and I know what it can do when it's not its turn. It's also a nice, healthy, friendly reminder that it can move during your turn. Oh, I put a space in there, so now it thinks I've edited this. So I think this is just it just helps clarify how monsters work. So formatting stuff, we've changed it to passive actions, reactions. There's a note here. This actually comes directly from Alex. So this is something that got into into Slayers 1.5, which, monsters aren't supposed to, or like there is no rule specifically for monsters using skills in the game. But there may be situations where it just feels like it makes sense for a monster to make a skill roll, kind of like how Slayers might have to make skill rolls to like climb up something or dodge out of the way or endure something or whatever. Like, what do we do when the monsters do that? And so there's just a rule in there that just says if in the rare circumstances that a monster would ever need to do a skill roll, just roll a d6 and use that as your hit miss sort of thing. So that's in there now. I think that's a good, nice thing just to have, just to say like, hey, this may come up from time to time. And also, so like Alex is pointing out here, like a lot of hunts with environmental things, right? So that's great. Monsters can dodge out of like collapsing bookshelves. That's a great idea. Also, you know, the rules of Slayers are mostly written because working under the assumptions of the 4 classes I made. But there are other classes. Yes, 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 exactly. Alex has beaten me to the punch because Alex knows Slayers better than anybody. Slayers can have abilities, right? Like, what if, like, I only made it based off of the 4 classes, but there's a shit ton of classes out there. And people can make classes that force monsters to do things, that to make skill rolls and stuff like that, or what would feel like it should be a skill roll. And now there's a rule in the book that says this is what happens. So now you can make classes that can provide these sorts of opportunities, and you won't be like, well, what are we supposed to do? The districts have been cleaned up a little bit, just to keep them more unified, because the way that they were structured and written was very different. Slayer's Row and Witchwood I wrote, and then the others were like kind of collaborative works with backers. Now it all works better. And then otherwise it's just like a bunch of cleanup stuff, right? That's sort of how the rest of it is just cleaning it up, making things clearer, removing a couple things, but nothing like big major. off the top of my head at least. Um, so what do I hope to do with 1.5? Well, 1.5 goes out for free to everybody whenever it's done. Patrons have the text right now. They all have the text. They can read it. They can play with 1.5 right now. Everyone who owns Slayers will eventually get 1.5 whenever Mike finishes. When Mike finishes it, then the itch file gets updated and everybody gets access to it. What does this mean though for third party stuff? This is something that I kind of want to think about just a little bit here. Do we have a list to it here? Do I have a list to it? Why do I not? I should add a list to the third party stuff in the actual game design thing. Let me find it real quick. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Slayer's third party content, right? So there's like a bunch of really cool third party content out here. And so what does this mean with 1.5? I mean, it means you can still technically run all of this stuff. None of this is necessarily like making any of the stuff that's been released unplayable. What it means is people who've released things like classes, maybe they want to go back and add that ready action, right? Like maybe you have a way of thinking about, well, what would the wrestler do at the start of a fight, right? I'm thinking with like Josh's see if I could just quickly, yeah, one flesh, one end. I think it'd be really cool. I'm sure Josh could come up with a clever ready action for this duo of Necromancer Cavalier sort of thing, inspired by Gideon. I think like that's like totally set for an interesting um, dynamic, like an interesting ready action. So there's a lot of these cool Slayers classes that I think if you added a 1.5 edit to them or update, then that would be maybe what you would need to do with your classes. Hunts, if you made hunts or adventures, you might want to restructure the monsters in terms of the new format. You don't technically have to, but it just might help people, might help you running them in the future. None of this stuff is required, by the way. You don't have to change any of your stuff if you don't want. I'm just thinking out loud for folks who go like, oh, so I've already released something. What should I do? Because I truly think the only things that people would need to update or want to update for their stuff, adding that ready action for classes, reformatting stat blocks for monsters, and that's pretty much it, right? Like, I don't think there's anything else that came up that you would really need to change. Now you also have the freedom, as Alex was kind of mentioning in chat, to like play around with the idea of having monsters make skill rolls. Like maybe that would be kind of a cool class that's all about making monsters take skill rolls for stuff. I don't know, that could be interesting. Right? Like you might have had a concept for a class that's like very like crowd control focused, and you're like, well, how do I make a crowd control focused character if like the enemies don't have to like roll to resist or do anything like that? And partly it was just you roll to hit, but maybe you do want the enemies to play around with skills. Now you have that freedom. We've got a few classes that do that, so all the monsters on the hunts that someone have. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so you gave them, yeah, that's a cool idea. Just give them ability stats or something like that. That's actually another interesting like solution you could do too. Is like you could just give every monster a skill die, right? Like a skill die size, and just say like, because I just say D6 for everything, just to keep things moving. But you may look through this list and you're like, well, the Bone Priest is like kind of a cool, powerful thing, so they should probably have like a D8 for skills. They should be better at rolling skills than a bandit, right? Um, like you choose one skill that they're D8 at, and then D6 for everything else. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Um, so yeah, that's the Slayers 1.5 update. It's very exciting. I'm excited to eventually get it out there to folks. Like I said, text is out there for patrons who want to read it early. Mike's working on layout and art and everything right now. He got some practice with the Slayer's Row stuff. Um, but I think that's the design commentary for Slayers 1.5. It actually went longer than I thought it would. I wasn't sure how long I would be able to go on with this because it's just an update, but turns out I can just ramble for quite a long time. Um, So I'm down to like hang out and like if folks have questions, I said like I would do a Q&A if people wanted with this. People like we don't have to do that if people don't have any questions, but I got nowhere to be. I'm here all day long hanging out with my dog. My plans for today are to do a another Drifters update. She's literally asleep under the bed, but I will give her a treat when she is awake. So when we went to go do the house inspection this morning, we left her with a friend who's her best dog friend. And they literally apparently wrestled for 3 hours straight. So she's just like donezo, which is great. Now I can do all of this in peace. My plans for like design stuff in the near future, I'm gonna work on drifters today. See if I can get that shotgun thing to a point where I feel like I can add it to the drifters update, so that I can send that out to patrons later this month, maybe sooner rather than later. Um, Time to Kill is out. Check out Time to Kill. The Nova paperback obviously is here. Looks good. I'm actually really happy with the quality. I'm really happy with how it looks. Um, so I don't really have to do a whole lot of changes with this, which is nice. Um, so I just have to make sure that the hardcover looks good. That arrives Tuesday. Once the hardcover for Nova arrives on Tuesday, I'm going to let people know, hey, charging cards, locking addresses soonish. So I can charge those cards, get that going, and put the big order in for all the books, which I'm very excited about. Then those will arrive, and I'll start packing them, start sending them out. So Nova print soon. Not like next week, but soon, which is very exciting. Um, Speaking of print, we're close, I think, with Time to Kill to get this as a print run. Yeah, we're pretty close. Pretty close. That's very exciting. I had one other thing that I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, I'm doing a coffee stream thing. So every Sunday, which is tomorrow morning, I'm hanging out with just my friends in the design space because I don't get to like sit down and just chat with people in design very often. These are going to just be very casual sort of things. We're just going to hang out Sundays, 9:30 my time, which I know might be early for some folks. Talking with Keegan tomorrow, which I'm very excited about. I think we might talk about West Marches. Don't normally plan on going into this with a plan, just kind of like shooting the shit with people. Um, but we both want to talk about West Marches. And I think Dan Phipps is next. And Dan wants to talk about video games. So hell yeah. And then I've got the Drakes is the third Sunday. So the dynamic Drake duo are going to be there on the third Sunday. I think they're the third Sunday, and then Riley is going to be the fourth Sunday. That'll be November, and then I've got a huge list of people that I can figure out what December is going to be. But that's my ongoing plan. I really appreciate everybody who hung out, wanted to see the design commentary. Cool ideas, cool ideas. Josh, I think I have you on the list. I think you've reached out. Yeah, Josh, you're on the list. You have reached out. You're on the list. I just have not figured out all these other people when I'm gonna do it. So you're on it. You're in you're in the list. On the list. You and I could literally just go actually get coffee. Like you, me, and Adira, like we could just go get coffee somewhere. Which would be great. Honestly, I would love to do that. And Logan Dean. He's in like Ravenswood, I think. So we could all hang out. Yeah, right? Real life? Gross. Um, that's it, I think. I think that's everything. I really appreciate folks who came by and wanted to talk about Slayers 1.5. I'm really excited about it. Oh boy. I can't show you her. She's asleep under the bed back there. Oh no, Navi, you keep redeeming the Clover cam, and I'm only going to disappoint you. My dog is so sleepy right now. Oh my god, it's so much Clover cam. Um, do I have like a really cute photo of Clover that I can show you real quick? Real quick? Look at my dog. Look at my dog. She's the cutest dog in the world. We have a like a Clover photo album on Google that just auto populates. So whenever we take a picture of her, it just goes directly to it. So there's like 4,000 photos, and I'm not kidding. Like there's 4,000 photos of her in there. Uh, so she's our child. We treat her like that. Um, Sweet beans, everybody. Well, I think I'm gonna hang out, relax for a little bit. Oh, Clover's got some friends outside, so maybe I'll bring her outside. And then I think I'm gonna work on some Drifter stuff today. I might start working on my next little game that's kind of inspired by Blades, kind of inspired by Riley's Markout game. I've got ideas about like out of game advancement stuff that I'm figuring out for like all kinds of stuff. So I'll probably do some design stuff later on. But if hopefully I can catch you all tomorrow morning for the coffee chill stream. That's 9:30 Central. Otherwise, you all have yourselves an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is you are. I'll be back tomorrow. Keegan and I talking West Marches, getting ready for that Nova West Marches campaign. So, you all have yourselves a great rest of the day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.